if you're going to be buying real estate here in Santa Barbara or just in general, and you've heard the recent headlines about the NAR settlement, you might be wondering, how am I going to navigate purchasing a home and being on the hook for my realtor's commission? So we wanted to just kind of play this out for you guys, give you some insight on some questions to ask your realtor when you're sitting there in your buyer broker or in your buyer consultation, and just really get a clear understanding of how you are going to be transacting in this new environment.
Yeah, and hopefully if you're watching this and you're not in our market, it's just powerful information and education for you to have as a buyer consumer to understand what the dialogue that you're going to, take place in is going to look like and sound like. And maybe it gives you some more food for thought, and you're able to kind of ask some deeper questions to the agent that you decide to work with.
Yeah. Totally. It's super important to know how you're going to be moving about. And I think this conversation will hopefully give some insight on that whole process. So I will be a buyer. Abel will be my agent that I'm sitting in this appointment with, and we'll just kind of start going through this.
Cool. Let's hear it.
All right, Abel. Well, let's just get to it. I've been hearing a lot in the news right now, and it sounds like sellers aren't going to be paying your commission anymore. Does that mean I'm on the hook for it?
Yeah. So what that means is this, Jackie, is that now moving forward in a post-NAR settlement environment, we will be responsible for signing a buyer-broker agreement together, okay? Now, for those of you that are listening, I've been signing buyer-broker agreements for a few years now. This new one is what's changed a little bit here, is the fact that you've always been responsible for paying the commission when we sign these buyer-broker agreements. What I can't do as an agent now is guarantee that I'm going to get compensated off the MLS. So that's how I always pitched it. Yes, I'm going to represent you for 3% commission, but don't worry, I get compensated by the seller on the MLS. And I could show you every listing that we see, there's going to be an MLS compensation being offered to me, right? Which will offset your obligation to pay. Come August, MLSs are going to remove buyer agency compensation. So there will no longer be a field there for that.
So you won't know if you're getting paid?
I won't know if I'm getting paid. So this new agreement also stipulates that you will be responsible for paying, just like the old one did. And if anyone else compensates me, it'll offset your obligation to pay. But I can't finish my conversation saying, don't worry, I am guaranteed compensation off the MLS. So that's the biggest change here. That is the biggest change on this buyer broker agreement.
So if you can't see if you're being compensated by the seller, and I have to sign this saying I'm going to pay this, how do you get the seller to pay it? I don't want to pay a commission that's never happened in the history. And now all of a sudden I've saved my money up and I can buy a home, and I have to now, no offense to you, but now I have to pay you hundreds of, maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars
at a certain price point, right? I'd love it if you paid me hundreds of thousands
in our
of dollars.
price point, it can get to that.
It can.
I mean, a majority of our homes are in that price point.
These new forms that just came out do have a few ancillary forms that come with it, and some of them are crazy. But there's this buyer identification and preferences and priorities, so it allows us the opportunity to go over what it is you're looking for, price point, requirements in the property. There also is this new form here that talks about the buyer financial and personal information, so no different than like a pre-qual. We talk about funds available and whether or not you have the funds to pay or not. So in the event that you don't have the funds,
I'm telling you, I don't have the funds, man. I've been saving forever.
I'm
trying to get this home.
There's lots of buyers that are going to be in that situation, right? I agree with that.
Putting 20% down here.
So the question is what can we do? Okay. Well, first and foremost, it's never been against the law for a seller to pay a commission, right? So a seller can still be paying a commission. Okay, so let's just get that out there. When we sign this, you're going to agree to pay me 3%. Worst case scenario, if you can't pay the 3% and I can't negotiate it into the deal, then we'll have to have another conversation for sure. But the fact of the matter is this. I can still ask in the offer for the seller to compensate me via a concession to you for this agreement that we've signed together.
Does that mean that I have to overshoot my offer to make it attractive, or how does that work?
Our offer is always going to be written from the perspective of competition, right? Especially in our, let's just say this is a $2 million buyer. It's a competitive price point. So you're going to have to compete regardless. Even pre-NAR settlement, you were still having to compete right over asking offers, and my commission was still being factored into the deal. You just weren't, most agents weren't signing buyer broker agreements stating you're on the hook to pay it.
Well, then can I just not sign this agreement and we just kind of go at it as we want to?
That's a great question. So in the post NAR world, we will no longer be allowed to just tour property and show you properties without an agreement signed that addresses compensation.
So if I want to tour a home through a showing, whoever that agent is, I need to sign one of these with them?
And I only could speak for our brokerage. I can't speak for any other brokerages, and we are in California and Santa Barbara, so I can't speak for everybody here. But yes, you will be responsible for signing either the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement, or what I like to call the baby bear of this form, which is like a property showing. I forgot the exact acronym. It's property showing. I don't know. I'll label it here in the video, but it's the baby bear of this agreement. It's up to 3 properties, and it's only a 30-day contract. But it still addresses compensation, and it still says you're responsible for compensation on these 3 properties.
What if I met you at your open house and I wanted you to represent me and you're representing the seller? Do I have to pay a commission then?
I'm still required to enter into a buyer agency relationship, and we still have to sign a buyer broker agreement together that'll address compensation, and we have to negotiate how much money I get to represent you.
And then you would negotiate that back to your seller to see if they'll pay?
In the offer via the RPA, yes. It's box 3G3. We would check that stating that we are asking for them to compensate me.
Well, what if I agree, sure, I only have the 1% commission to pay you, but I'm sure you want more than that.
For sure.
I know you work hard. I'm sure you want more. I just don't have it.
Right.
What do we do?
Right. So what do we do? Okay. So that's an interesting conversation. Okay. Because I'm probably not going to agree to work for 1% on this contract. In fact, if I agree to work for 1% on this contract, but I'm able to negotiate that the seller's paying. Well, let me back up. Maybe I find out that the seller on this particular property interested in is paying a 2.5% commission, or I'm sorry, a 2.5% concession that can be used towards commission. Well, I want the 2.5%, but I can't make more than the 1% that you and I agreed to, unless otherwise changed in writing somehow between agent and broker. So I'm not going to sign a buyer agency agreement at 1%. I will sign it at 2.5% or 3%.
So then what happens if we sign it at 2.5% and they're only paying 1%?
What happens then? That's where it gets even more interesting. And that's why you'll hear me say I think there will be downward pressure on buyer agent commissions, because at the end of the day, I mean, sure, we make great money sometimes.
If you broke it down hourly with how hard we work with some of these clients.
And when I say we,
that lump sum check looks good.
There's some agents in our market that are making millions and millions and millions of dollars. Okay.
Sure.
Majority of us are not.
It ain't us.
Majority of agents are not making millions of dollars. Okay.
What's the average? Like 64K?
I don't even know.
Agent makes
let's
like
say the
64K?
average might be, let's just call it 100K. Well, first of all, you can't live in Santa Barbara on 100K. Let's just get that out there. So this is where downward pressure will come, because as good agents like ourselves work with great clients that we do, especially the ones that are just trying to make this happen, we're going to be faced with the question of, do I want to help this person get this house if I'm only going to get paid 1%? Or am I going to walk away from this
person?
Not necessarily person, because we can still work for other properties together. Yeah. Or am I going to walk away from this transaction and leave you high and dry? Basically, is the way I play it out in my head. I think that's how it would work. Because if you and I have a buyer broker agreement for this particular property, I don't know how you go and hire another agent for 1% to represent you on that property. I don't know. Again, all this stuff will unfold as time continues. But as an agent, a buyer's agent, you will be faced with that decision. Are you going to help this client for 1% or not? And that's where I think the downward pressure will come.
Yeah. I'm breaking character to say that that's my biggest fear in this, is being stuck as an agent representing somebody that you really want to get this home, but now your commission is on the line. And at the end of the day, this is a job that feeds and supports our family and our life.
Because it doesn't make sense for us to work at 1%. It just doesn't pan out because you have a broker split.
You have your partner split. You have your taxes.
You have the IRS, first of all, who comes before
all of that
stuff. And you could only afford to do business to a certain degree, right?
Truly, truly. I think it puts us in a position where we're going to have to make moral decisions. And I mean, we know what we'll do. We're always in the best interest of our clients, but not every agent is like that, which is why it's going to be really important to have these dialogues, to be this buyer having this conversation with the agent and the what ifs and the defaults and the worst case scenarios, so that you understand beforehand, instead of being in an offer situation on a dream home and having an agent who's not ready to work for you.
And I think that's what's in this form seems weird at first, which is the financial information and personal information form, but it allows you the opportunity as a buyer to be full disclosure with the buyer, to be like, yo, dude, I mean, if I can only pay you 1%, or if you only, I can't afford to pay you anything, but if you only get 1%, what are you going to do? Because that is a real question that I can't answer right now. But that is a real question that will come up.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've been doing this a long time, and I feel really confident on being able to negotiate and get concessions for clients to offset these types of closing costs. And I think that's going to become more common as sellers get used to the way business is done. You're going to find out that buyers are going to be asking for concessions, and they're going to ask for concessions to help offset commission. And the market is not COVID market anymore. People aren't just paying stupid money, stupid prices anymore. That's
for stupid houses.
It doesn't make any sense. That's why you see inventory building up.
Yeah.
So I think there will be a good opportunity to negotiate, still have a good opportunity to negotiate that compensation into the offer so that you get good representation. What I get upset about with this settlement issue, though, is that it forced these types of situations where you may be forced to hire somebody who's inferior that can't give you the representation you deserve because you can't pay.
Yeah.
That's the crappy part about all this.
Yeah.
That they didn't think about.
It's the Temu agent.
Yeah. I don't even know if that site's legit or not, but that's the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
If you're a seller and you wanted to pick a discount agent, at least you decided to pick them because you just didn't want to pay and you knew you wanted to just go with the cheapest option possible. Buyers are now kind of almost forced into that because they can't afford it.
And I would think most of the time from the buy side, you need the strongest agent. The listing side, you need an agent with resources and creativity and negotiation and all of that. But as a buyer, you really need somebody that understands the market deeply. They know the intricacies. They have the network and the relationships. They're in it, and they know how to negotiate for you. Those are the best buyer agents in our entire network.
And you're not going to find them at 1%.
They can't do it.
You
can't do your job at 1%.
So
have these conversations.
Question.
I think
we have another question there.
I could put another question in there as a
We
buyer.
had two.
I was just gonna say, let's lay out what our offer looks like then. Let's say, fine, I've agreed to pay 2.5 on paper, but you and I have talked about it, and I really can't afford to pay 2.5. I really can't do it. How do you vouch for me in this situation?
Vouch for you from the perspective of
what's our offer look like?
Well, our offer, could look a few different ways. Either one, it could be at the full asking price, asking for that concession.
Up front in the offer, or are we waiting until negotiations and an accepted offer?
No. It would be up front. It would be up front. In the RPA, when you put the offer together, we're disclosing that you want to ask them for a concession to offset your obligation.
Is there something in the new RPA that has that speculation?
In the RPA, there's always been the box 3G3. It came out, I don't know when it came out, 22 or whatever it is. So it's been there, but no one ever used it because most agents didn't work on buyer broker agreements. Right. But yeah, that would then populate a seller payment to buyer broker. I don't know the exact acronym for it right now, but it would populate that form that would then go into what you've agreed to pay your agent and the seller's agreed to pay.
So in the first initial offer that I write up with you, that seller will see up front that we're asking for.
Yep,
this.
and they'll be requesting a copy of this buyer broker agreement that states that you agreed to pay.
So they know what that percentage is.
Exactly. So that's one way. Second way that I foresee happening is maybe you could pay, right? Maybe you don't want to offer full price anymore. You're like, hey, yeah, cool, it's $2 million, but I'm going to take 60 grand off that 2 million because I agreed to pay Abel 60 grand for representation. So my offer is now $1,940,000.
But I'm paying commission.
But you're paying commission. The net's still the same to the seller, whether it's
That
2
could-
million paying 60 grand or you paying 1,940, not asking for it. The net is the same.
Could be good on a loan to do it that way because then your
If the
overall
buyer
price
has the
is
means.
lower.
So that's another way. The last way that I could see this is you could offer $2,060,000 and ask for the $60,000 back as a concession, which still nets the seller $2 million. So those are the three different ways it could be structured. So there's opportunities for us to negotiate this into the transaction. Where it gets a little more complicated is when we're in a multiple offer situation.
Right.
Unfortunately, now the ability to pay is taken into consideration of the terms of the offer when you're in a multiple offer situation. So if I was a discount agent representing a buyer and we agreed to 1%, and if you made an offer at $2 million and there was 5 other offers at $2 million, but every other agent was paying 2.5%, and you only agreed to get 1%, you've now beat those other offers out because your agent's asking for 1.5% less than everybody else, which would then increase the net of the seller.
Right.
Again, another way for downward pressure on buyer agent commission. All to be figured out, but those are the three different ways I could see all this working.
And then sellers just counter back at whatever they want until there's some agreed upon terms.
Well, a seller wins in that situation perfectly because they might have agreed to pay 2.5, but all of a sudden they now only have to pay 1.5. So they just save that 1%. The seller puts that money in their pocket.
Right.
So a seller ends up paying 3.5, 4.5% commission. Now, not 6, not 5.5. So they win. It's all interesting. It's all going to be figured out how we navigate it all. That's essentially how it works. I think some homes are going to be extremely competitive. What did we say? May 31% of the homes in Santa Barbara sold over the asking price. Those homes are probably going to be experiencing this more than ever. It's going to be aggressive. But hey, for the other 70% that have sold at list price or under list price, there's probably going to be commissions negotiated in there. So I still think there's a really good opportunity to have commissions negotiated in the offer.
I think the most important part of that is finding the agent that's going to do that for you.
That's where the buyer now has the power. And for you watching this, if you are a buyer, be smart. You're on the hook for paying your agent via the buyer broker agreement. Interview multiple agents. Have buyer consults. Show me your process. How are you going to get me to the finish line? What systems do you have in play to take care of me and protect my deposit? What systems do you have in place to take
protect
care
my
of me
time,
after
energy.
the escrow closes?
Yeah.
I'm paying you 60 grand. I want to know everything that I'm getting for 60 grand.
Better
And
be
that,
getting a
to
Christmas
me,
gift every year.
That to me is the most exciting part about all this.
Yeah.
Is it's going to require agents to level up. For those agents that don't want to level up, you're going to have to get out of the business eventually because you're going to lose market share.
And if you're selling yourself for 1% and doing all these deals, you can't survive.
Like we said, you're not going to survive. That's a losing business model. Fact of the matter is this. You hear agents are going to get out of the business. I agree with that. It's going to create better agents, which means you, the buyer, have better agents to choose from, but you're not going to find them at a cheap price. Bad agents are going to get out. The ones with no experience are going to get out. That's good for all the other agents that do business. And it's great for the consumer because you're going to have better agents to choose from. So I see this all as a win-win as far as elevating our industry because it's so easy to get into. You're going to elevate the ones that are actually able to survive.
I like the positive twist on it.
I'm a positive guy.
I like it. I worry for our first-time buyers and those that really are struggling to get into the market. And
that is another really unfortunate part of the settlement is that
for me, I'm like,
it's going to
come on.
squeeze the financially stressed buyer, which is always the first-time home buyer, the VA buyer. But there are some signs out there of light at the end of the tunnel with this. One, I believe VA has come out and said they're going to not consider the compensation to a buyer's agent as a non-allowable.
Right.
Meaning the veteran can pay. But like we just said, the veteran can't pay. They don't have any money. Understand. I think it's one of those things that they're probably going to allow them to finance into the loan. No different than the VA funding fee. It's a big fee. They allow them to finance that into the loan.
Yeah, you bring that up, and I think if, you know, loans change, it can be a little bit more of a helpful situation for that first-time buyer.
I think first-time home buyer, government-type loans, government-insured loans are going to change. They're going to have to allow these commissions to be financed into the deal.
And amortized over however long your loan is. I mean, that would be the only affordable and manageable way for some of these first-time buyers to do this.
And I think the last thing the DOJ is going to want to see is any sort of discrimination coming out of this, where you've discriminated against the, first-time home buyer. That goes exactly against all the government-insured programs that are out there for first-time
I
homebuyers.
know. That's what's so crazy about this whole situation, trying
again,
to protect consumers.
Still early, just rolling out. Going to be a wild, wild ride for the first, few months, maybe even the year until all this stuff gets figured out. But believe me, the industry of real estate is not going anywhere. It's a resilient industry. It's something that everyone needs, and we will figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Find agents that are anchored, who are in the depths of these contracts and who understand how to vouch and protect you.
Cool. Hey, if you have any questions, please reach out. If you're a buyer watching this video and you're not in our market, I'm always here to help. We're both here to help. Please drop a comment or respond. I've represented hundreds of buyers in my career, and I'm an open book. I'm willing to give any information you need. So I'm Abel Ramos with Compass.
I'm Jackie Potter.
See you next time.